everyone, this is Maheen and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. Today we break down early stage activation frameworks, virtual incubation architecture, and the targeted strategies that are required to unleash hidden entrepreneurial potential across rural North America. In 2026, protecting a small town economy, a regional community, or independent founder from economic stagnation, out migration, and unvalidated business models, it requires moving past urban centric incubation setups to deploy virtual learning cohorts, hands-on model validation, and dedicated activation resources. Joining us today is Andrew Button, the founder and CEO of Mashup Lab. Andrew is a seasoned rural economic development leader and entrepreneur with over 15 years of dedicated experience across Atlantic Canada and beyond. Holding an MBA from St. Mary's University and recognized among the Wallace McCain Institute's top 30 high growth entrepreneurs, he has built Mashup Lab into a powerful virtual incubator, guiding more than 2,000 entrepreneurs to start and scale over 1,200 businesses across 700 plus rural communities. So there's lots that we will be diving into. So without a further ado, let's welcome Andrew. Andrew, it's an absolute pleasure having you on the show this morning. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thanks so much. Yeah, great to be with you.
Now, Andrew, a persistent and deeply flawed assumption in regional economic development is that high impact innovation, it only happens in major urban centers, completely missing the vast pool of talented entrepreneurs that are really hidden in plain sight across small towns. Tell us, why are rural entrepreneurs overlooked, and how does Mashup Lab help activate their potential?
Yeah, great question. This is why I spent the vast majority of my career digging into and looking at. And I think there's a couple of reasons that entrepreneurs and businesses in rural places don't always get the same kind of attention that their urban counterparts might get. Often they're tucked away in small towns, scattered like matchsticks across the countryside, and not concentrated in one big city. And that makes them hard to kind of wrap our arms around or really identify, unless you're living in and working in that place. But even within sort of those communities, and this is a space where we've spent a lot of time, is really thinking about the untapped potential that is already existing in that rural place. So, I had dozens of examples of businesses that have started out in sleepy little rural towns of 500, 600, 700 people, and have become global competitors in their space and are growing, innovative, scalable companies, as well as all kinds of other kinds of entrepreneurs and businesses in those places.
Right. That is a good starting point, Andrew, and that completely shifts how we approach, regional economic development, right? I mean, meeting people in their own local context with accessible virtual support unlocks massive creative capacity that standard municipal programs completely overlook. Now let's closely look at the early stages of business creation and analyze why the activation phase delivers an outsized return on investment. Tell us, why is early business validation so critical before launching a venture?
Yeah, and I've been guilty of this as an entrepreneur myself. We often will fall in love with our ideas and the visions and aspirations we have for those ideas before really thinking about the value that we're creating for a particular kind of customer, and getting super specific around that, and what options those customers and those potential that potential business has today, and exploring like what new and different value am I going to bring to that customer, and really thinking about that exchange of like, how do I create value for this particular kind of customer? How do I deliver on that value? And then how do I build a business and get paid for having delivered that value? And those are the harder questions to really dig into. And really, sometimes we can't, as entrepreneurs, see the forest for the trees. We blind ourselves with the passion and love we have for the thing that we're building and creating. So getting around other experienced entrepreneurs and other people that are experiencing, guiding entrepreneurs through that process, and helping them understand the relatively easy ways that they can begin to test and experiment and learn about the dynamics both within the customer's world as well as in the market, can be extraordinarily valuable for them, and save them tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of both time and money misdirected. And learning early is a critical part of that.
Well, that's exceptionally practical advice for anyone that is funding local economic initiatives, really, because from our understanding, investing intentional resources early to help people validate their business model, it generates massive economic dividends across rural communities. Now, Andrew, let's transition directly into scalable virtual delivery models and examine how digital cohorts bring small town founders together. Tell us, how does Mashup Lab scale virtual support for rural founders across regions?
Yeah, so I guess Mashup Lab was really built on two core principles. Number one, that there's a massive pool of untapped entrepreneurial talent sitting on the sidelines in rural places, not engaging with all of the awesome programs and supports that are potentially available to them. So well over 80% of the folks, those 2,000 people that we've now put through our virtual process, have never signed up for a business or entrepreneurship program ever before, despite having access to literally dozens of things, some of which are being delivered right in their community. And when we started out to sort of solve this problem over a decade ago now, we knew that it was really going to be a virtual model that will allow us to scale to all of the rural communities that we wanted have an impact in. The second principle was like, the more of those people that are sitting on the sidelines that we can get off the sidelines and actually exploring ways to start and grow businesses in those community actually benefits us all as community members in those rural places. So there was those two things that were at play that really inspired where Mashup Lab came from, is that there are people that are out there with really great ideas for our businesses in our communities. And the more than, regardless of the size and scale of those business, just the volume of those folks that we can get starting and growing and exploring entrepreneurship, the better. So we found that delivering those kinds of supports through a virtual model made it accessible to a whole other group of entrepreneurs that may find it difficult to get to a physical place during the middle of the day. Folks that may be working a full-time job or home with their kids during the day and need to explore these things in the evening. So that was the model that we really leaned into right out of the gate 10 years ago. So the way that that looks to today is, and this is all we've done really for the last 10 years, is try to figure out how to deploy that virtual model a little bit better every year. So we've now built the engine that allows us to, for each one of our trained facilitators, to actually run 6 cohorts of our virtual business incubator simultaneously in the same 6-week period, 5 times a year. So that gives us the capacity to work with well over 1,000 entrepreneurs in rural places across both Canada and the US. And we've just specialized in that delivery model and how to make 90-minute Zoom calls not feel like 90-minute Zoom calls.
Right. You have transformative insight on designing scalable community-first learning environments. And you're right. I mean, using digital tools to connect small groups of rural founders, it really creates a supportive network that turns isolated ideas into growing, sustainable businesses. Now, Andrew, let's turn our attention to grassroots community funding and explore how micro grants inspire local action. Tell us, how do community microfunds inspire local innovation and action?
Yeah, and so what we've been learning is that putting like even just small amounts of money into the hands of local entrepreneurs that comes from people in their community, their neighbors, can actually drive a whole other kind of activation and innovation from those entrepreneurs in those rural places. Because that type of funding is not just about return on investment. It's actually just as much a part of return on involvement from the people that are providing those funds. So the value exchange not only becomes, how do I get my investment back from giving this entrepreneur this money, it becomes, what can I do as a community member to increase the chances of success of that entrepreneur? Because now I'm not just financially invested in that business succeeding. I'm invested from a community perspective as well. I want to see those thriving businesses in my community. So when those kinds of micro grants come, it allows entrepreneurs uh, to really experiment more quickly, move more quickly, and the message that they receive from the folks that are providing those micro grants is really about, we trust you, we believe in your idea, and we believe that the success of your business is important for our community. And it becomes a much deeper relationship than just access to funding. And that can have an outweighed impact, especially in rural places for those entrepreneurs that are building companies there.
Yeah, that offers a wonderful model for fostering authentic, community-driven innovation and removing red tape, as you mentioned, and providing quick, unconditional funding. And it really encourages people to step up and make a visible difference right in their hometowns. Um, Now, Andrew, let me draw on your 15 plus experience of rural leadership and multi-venture experience for an immediate practical takeaway for our listeners. Tell us, what is the first step for rural entrepreneurs to validate their business ideas?
Well, I think, just to sum it up in one sentence, is really like, get out of your own head with those ideas. And what I mean by that is a couple of things. Is, surround yourself with other entrepreneurial people doing entrepreneurial things. So there's a lived experience that other entrepreneurs bring to the problem you're trying to solve, the idea that you're trying to move forward, that you just really can't get without having gone through it yourself. So that can sometimes be challenging for entrepreneurs in small places. They don't necessarily have, a whole group of those folks just hanging out in town. So sometimes they may have to look at leveraging the wider community of entrepreneurs to explore those things, and then start to just socialize those ideas. Because I think, again, as entrepreneurs, we can fall in love with our own ideas, and really start heading down a path that may not necessarily be the path to building the right kind of solution. So bouncing those sorts of things off of other experienced entrepreneurs can really give you kind of feedback and direction that would allow you to understand better, like, what's the minimum viable version of this big idea I have that I could actually implement today, and begin to learn about my customer and the market dynamics and the business model I need to wrap around this great idea that I have. So I really encourage those folks to, as quickly as they can, start to share the things that they're thinking about in terms of either starting or growing their business with other experienced entrepreneurs in either their actual community or the virtual community.
Right, right. That gives our listeners an extraordinarily clear and practical starting point, really. And um, this is such an, I think we should put more emphasis on this. It's simply stepping out to talk directly with prospective, local customers immediately reveals whether your idea solves the real market need or not. But this was truly a great, great conversation with you, Andrew. Thank you so much for sharing, actionable sprints for aspiring rural entrepreneurs. As we wrap up, tell us, just, with the final wrap up, how can communities help small towns become the thriving entrepreneurial hubs?
Yeah, great question, and I love talking about this because I had spent 15 years in various kind of rural economic development roles before starting Mashup Lab. And I understand in those small towns how easily it can become to get stretch a mile wide and only go an inch deep on any of the things that show up on your desk. And I think our economic development folks in those small towns have done a relatively good job of building out the ecosystem of supports around retaining, expanding, and attracting businesses. But what we're learning is that a little bit of intentional focus on the activation of untapped entrepreneurial potential in your community can actually have an outweighed return on investment of that time and effort, especially in rural places, in so many different ways, not just by new businesses showing up on your main streets, but all sorts of other ripple effects that we start to see happening in those rural places when you get more entrepreneurial people doing entrepreneurial things.
Right, right. No, that is a spectacular final reminder that True economic resilience, it really relies on trusting local talent, investing heavily in the early activation phase, and really providing accessible support so anyone can turn a great idea into a thriving enterprise. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us to share your mastery today and for sharing such great insights. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate you.
And listeners, that was Andrew Button from Mashup Lab showing us how to really collapse the expensive gaps of urban bias economic supports, leverage virtual cohorts to activate rural business talent, and deploy community-backed initiatives to really secure regional growth in 2026. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Please, to learn more about the ecosystem, visit smefoundations.ca. And before we leave, a special shout out to UPS and ADP for their ongoing commitment to empowering small businesses across Canada. Please join us next week as we explore our next critical business topic. Until next time, keep innovating and keep growing.